Hereby I open this academic ceremony in which Daria Ilishkina will defend the academic thesis Self-Regulation of the Motivation to Learn. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Yes, thank you. Dear Prorector, dear members of committee, dear colleagues, dear my friends and family here present and online, next in 15 minutes I would like to tell you briefly about the results of my research dedicated to self-regulation of the higher education students' motivation to learn. A few words about the context of the study. Everyday students in higher education are facing a lot of problems. Some of them could lack confidence in their abilities to learn or in performing particular learning tasks, whereas others could struggle or are searching for example, quiet room where they can just study and read their book. In other words, students are really facing a lot of motivational problems, and that's why we need to investigate how we can help them, how we can improve their process of self-regulation so that they could in turn help themselves in the moment when they're struggling and facing motivational problems. Currently, already known 9 motivation regulation strategies which are dedicated to help students in motivational self-regulation. These strategies were originally found by asking students what will they do if they face a motivational problem. And by answering to this imaginative scenario, students gave their answers about what they would think they would do in such a situation. However, we don't know what students don't know. I mean that there probably could be some strategies which students didn't mention because they don't know them. That's why these strategies, the known one, could probably lack ecological validity. That's why one of the goals of this research was to find out what actually students are doing, thinking and feeling when they're facing a motivational problem just in time. Another problem of the current research is that motivation is a very tough construct. So there are a lot of perspectives, a lot of theories, a lot of approaches, which of them define different aspects of motivation. That's why probably if we look at motivation more systematically and we look at the relation between known motivation regulation strategies and what we know about the motivation, we could figure out new strategies or maybe we can find new gaps in the motivational theories. So that's why the primary research question of the whole research was to find out whether the known set of motivation regulation strategies adequately cover the full range of different motivational elements about which we at least know right now, and also whether they improve actually students' motivation while they are facing motivational problems. In order to look at motivation systematically, we decided to take the activity theory perspective. So this theory was originated by Leontiev and then developed by the school of his co-workers and scholars. And this theory assumes that we can look at students or any kind of activity like a 3-level system. The higher order level, so it's actually the whole activity like studying at university or studying in a big course. But each big activity consists of a lot of small actions. For example, studying at university consists of performing a task of reading a book or visiting lectures, working with your peers, and so on. So there are a lot of actions within this overarching activity studying at university. And when we see someone actually reading a book in the library, this is the moment when we see the operation. So when the action really is being performed in a real situation, real circumstances. This 3-level structure suggests that on each level we also can find different motivational elements which could support this structure. So it's like motivation and activity are 2 sides of the same coin. There were found several, or not found, but theoretically suggested different motivational elements, which also in line with current theories of motivation to learn. So the main element is motives, goals, and tasks, which is actually the answer to the question why somebody is going to university or going to a course or reading a book. So this is the why question: why am I studying? The other important motivational element is, of course, students' emotions, which help us to understand whether we are going in the right direction while we are studying. Students' meaning, it's like a glue between what one actually wants and whether the action or activity can help to reach what one wants. So meaning is this understanding that I can reach something that I want by performing this particular activity and of course the actions which constitute it. And means and beliefs, the last motivational element, it's like a tools that we need to perform an action. It could be like a real tool, for example, you maybe need your laptop to do a presentation, but also it could be like inner tools, like your self-belief, self-confidence that you actually can learn or can present your thesis. So means and beliefs, it's like tools that we need to perform the actions, and sometimes even if you want to learn, it's not enough because maybe you don't have an appropriate tools to perform this action. We don't know how these motivation elements are related to known motivation regulation strategies. We also actually don't know how these motivational elements are related to motivational problems which students are experiencing in real life, and we don't know how the strategies are related to motivational problems. So this triangle of motivation is the core focus of this research. The participants were higher education students with different nationalities from the former Commonwealth of Independent States countries and different study programs and different universities in Moscow. The first three studies were dedicated to investigating the higher level of this activity system. So we analyzed the students' motivation to learn at university in general and to course. The first study, which is described in chapter 2, analyzed the relationship between the non-motivational element and the strategies that students used. The second study brought more personal perspective, so we analyzed what profiles originated from these elements and how students are differentiated by different motivational profiles, and whether there is a difference between students with different motivational profiles in the preference of strategies that they usually use to help with own motivation. The third study focused on dynamic aspect of motivation. So we analyzed whether and how students' motivation was changing during the course and whether the non-motivation regulation strategies were related to these changes. The last study, the most ambitious one, it's tried to look at the whole system. So we simultaneously try to look at what's happening towards students' motivation to learn at university in general, and at the same time what's going on with their motivation when they're facing a real motivational problem just in time of learning. So in this final study, students fulfilled a lot of diaries describing their thoughts and feelings in real time when studying at university and home, and describing what problems they were facing and what they were feeling and thinking while tackling these problems. And now briefly about results and discussion of the research. First of all, we found that students' motivation was changing, yes, throughout the course. Even if you came to a course very intrinsically motivated, you're willing to study, you're interested in the topic, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that you will save this motivation till the end of the course. And there is a positive also news. Even if you come to the university or to the course and you think that you don't like it at all, probably you still have a chance to find an interest. So I think this is a good and bad news. Yes, students' motivation changes at least along the course. Also, we found that while students were experiencing motivational problems in real time, their thoughts were reflected, the motivation elements that we were discovering were really reflected in the students' thoughts. So they're really, when facing motivational problems, we were thinking about these theoretical constructs like goals, motives, tools, meanings, and so on. But unexpectedly, we didn't find the relationship between these two between the high level of motivation to learn at university and with the lower level of feelings and thoughts which appear in just in time of executing a learning task. And so this was a surprising findings, but still, yes, we assume that probably the multi-level system could exist, but the relationship between these levels is still unknown and it needs more discovery. We also found that motives have the higher relationships with all other motivational elements, And also interesting that students with a mixture of profiles, so with the predominant as intrinsic as extrinsic motives, outperformed other students in all other motivation elements. So also it was surprisingly because we expected that students with purely intrinsic motivation will outperform others in the levels of other motivational elements. So this leads us to a discussion that probably different motivational elements have different weights in motivational structure, and also this is something that needs more research in future. Of course, we analyzed the relationship between students' motivation and the non-motivation regulation strategies, and I think that the interesting finding of our research that we found the two functions of strategies. So whereas one strategist helps students to change motivation from intrinsic to extrinsic or vice versa, there were the other motivation regulation strategies that help to retain the same motivation. So these strategies will not help you if you want to change your motivation, but they will help you if you want to stay in the same, I would say, mood, in the same motivation. So this is also give us a clue about developing the self-regulation process and thinking about that if we want to help students, maybe we also need to teach them that it's not only important to work with your motivation to change it, but probably it's also important to work with your motivation to retain it in the same good move. My favorite finding, we found that actually while experiencing in real life motivational problems, students were not thinking what to do with them. So they were thinking about the problem, they were thinking about the state, again probably because we asked them this question based on our diaries, but there were no clues to the strategies, to the thinking about, okay, I feel that I don't want to study. What shall I do with it? And this is a very interesting finding because, again, we assume and we know that there are at least 9 motivation regulation strategies, but when we, at least in our sample, observed students in real life, it looks that they don't use them. So this is, again, give us a clue to analyzing that maybe motivation regulation, self-regulation is not something that with which we're born, but maybe something that students need to develop and also need to learn how to do it. We also find the limitations of the known 9 motivation regulation strategies. Firstly, as I said, they were related only to motivational elements of the higher order level, so it's the motivation to learn at university in general, but they were not related to the students' motivation appeared just in time of performing a learning task. And most interesting that these strategies had much stronger relations only with one motivation element, again with motives. So this is the general reason why students are choosing to learn and not to learn. That's why by analyzing the activity theory proposed by activity theory motivation elements, by analyzing the current 9 motivation regulation strategies and the students' thoughts that appear just in time performing learning task, we suggested a little bit another view of current motivation regulation strategies. So we suggest that by reframing them and make 4 strategies, it will help students to cover more motivational elements and to have more freedom in thinking about how they can improve their motivation to learn. We think that students could benefit by thinking the first strategy, by thinking about why do they need learning? If they want to perform a learning task, why do you want to do your presentation? Why do you want to read the textbook? And it could be also a more higher order question. Why do you want to study at university? Lending meaning to not learning probably will help students to analyze the consequences of choosing not learning activity, like going to the cinema or having a rest, something like this. Preparing the means necessary for learning and optimizing beliefs, it will help students to think about different kinds of tools, again, like external, like a laptop or internet connection, and internal, like different positive beliefs that they can open and actualize when they prepare to perform a learning task. And the most difficult, from my point of view, strategy, prioritizing different motives for learning or not learning. In our study, there were students which were struggling between choosing not only between learning or going to the cinema, but, for example, between doing the homework for one course or doing the homework for another course. And this conflict even between two study activities also took their effort and attention. That's why a strategy that will help students to understand how they prioritize what they want and thus what they need to do could also help them. So this is the highlights of my research. I suggest that motivation is a complex, dynamic, multi-level system of motivation elements, and probably the current motivation regulation strategies do not cover it. So we need new, and we also suggested some strategy that can help. And I think that the most important that we should consider motivational self-regulation as a complex cognitive task. So, and that means that again, students need to learn how to do it. Fortunately, we have for component instructional design model, which can help us understanding how to develop these programs. So the better we understand the motivation of the system, I believe the better strategies and approaches we can find to help students to improve their motivation while facing different motivational problems. Thank you for your attention. Now I give the word back to the project.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We will now start with the opposition. And the opposition will be opened by Professor Savelberg. He's Professor of Evolving Academic Education at Maastricht University.
Dear candidate, first of all, I want to congratulate you very much with this very nice work and also involve your team in this. I also like the artwork very much, and I thought it was kind of a puzzle. It looked like they're all part of one big artwork and different separations. Yeah. But let's go to the content. When I started reading this, I read your initial thesis somewhere around summer, and then last week again. And then I noticed there was one difference. At least I found one difference. I was not looking for it, but I just came across it. And it's in figure 2.4. It's where you have two panels with intrinsic motives and motivational regulation strategies, and one with the extrinsic. And in the original document, there were 3 in the intrinsic and 5 in the extrinsic. And now it's the opposite in the final thesis. So can you explain what has changed and why you changed this?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. That's because of the lack of my attention, and one of the opponents figured out that the figure is wrong, so the text was correct. Okay. That's why I changed it. So now the figure is aligned with the text and it's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was also not so clear for me how you made the division. I read it again, and so what were the reasons for separating 3 from 5, and 3 I could understand, but it was not so clear why the final 2 were now in the intrinsic and originally in the extrinsic. I think I couldn't find it. Maybe you can explain it?
Yes, of course. We did the correlational study. We analyzed the relationship between students' motives and strategies. And so it appeared that the strategies, which you see like named intrinsic, they had much higher relationship with motivation, with intrinsic motives, and they had lower relationship with extrinsic motives. And another strategies, which we named extrinsically motivated strategies, they have the vice versa relationship.
Okay. Yes, I saw this. I think there was only a small difference, and it's not something that you could have tested statistically, whether there's a difference between the correlations, or could you?
Yes, that was the difference. We couldn't measure, like we didn't do the afterwards analysis to analyze whether this difference was statistically different. So that's why we just performed the correlation analysis, and then we did the structural analysis, which also proved that the structural model with 2 separated clusters of strategies worked better than if we made this stretch.
Yes, okay, clear. Another related question is about the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Yeah. And sometimes it's also called controlled motivation as extrinsic and autonomous as intrinsic. when you talk about self-regulation, I think the word regulation is very close to controlling something. So how can self-regulation lead to intrinsic motivation? What would be your definition of intrinsic motivation anyway?
Oh, this is such a good question. I will try to make it short. I think that intrinsic motivation is actually what you feel that you are in control of your choices. And that the choices that you make it because you feel the connection with yourself. In such a way, purely intrinsic motivation, it's, a very high level of self-regulation, such high that you even maybe do not feel it like a self-regulation. And vice versa, extrinsically motivated, it means that I cannot control myself. I mean that if I have a choice, I will not choose this. But I'm choosing because there is another control. It could be also control like my own prejudice, but I feel like it's not me. It's something like, parents' voices inside my head. And I feel that actually I'm not controlling the way I choose. It's someone or something is doing it for me. That's how I differentiate it in short.
But if you say intrinsic is that you feel in control, I have the opposite feeling. When I'm intrinsic motivated for something, I'm not in control. I just want to do it. I have no choice.
Yeah.
But maybe one short question, also related to this. You suggest that now you have this division between extrinsic and intrinsic strategies, and you say, well, if we provide workshops to students, we can change their motivation. And I really doubt that. If I don't like to be active, do some movement activity, I'm never going to do it.
Yeah.
Do you think that can be changed by just saying, well, it's good for myself, or?
No, I think that we cannot change students' motivation, but we can give them tools. We can teach them tools that if they want to use them, they can have more possibilities to work with own motivation. But again, it's on their side. Like, I don't believe that you can teach someone, but you can create opportunity environment so that the one could learn.
Okay.
But here, right now, we don't know what to teach.
Thank you very much for your answer. This is a very interesting topic, and we think we can talk longer for it. I give the word back to the prorector.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Savelberg. The opposition will be continued by Professor Peetsma, Professor of Learning and Motivation at the University of Amsterdam, and she's present online.
Dear candidate, congratulations with your interesting dissertation on self-regulation in motivation and learning. In different studies, you use the concept instrumentality the students see in their learning. A concept cognitive in nature, the usefulness and necessity of the learning for their future as a researcher in your studies. As well, you use emotions concepts in your studies. I wondered why you did not use the time perspective concept instead in your studies. A perspective on past, present, and future learning, for instance. You can choose one or two of these time periods. In earlier times, this concept was also rather cognitive in nature, besides the behavioral intention to work and to learn for work later, a career later, a perspective. Since the end of the last century, the future time perspective concept is used in many studies, including an affective component, is usually including an affective component, last 25 years or even more. It is defined with values, goals, cognitive, behavioral intentions, work, towards your goal, and an effective perspective on the future, for instance, on the future of students' learning and work career, how you feel with the career in perspective. As this future time perspective concept was in many studies, and almost all studies I know, a strong predictor of investment in learning of the students. This could have been a useful concept in your studies, I thought, when reading your studies. What do you think of this?
Hi, esteemed opponent. Thank you for your question. So if I have understood correctly, the question is why we choose the perception of instrumentality as a construct, not the future time perspective, and because the perception of instrumentality has more cognitive accent and doesn't show us also the effective side of this process. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, indeed. So it was combined in that concept, like, while you use both the instrumentality and emotions, affections. And I thought it's included in one concept, time perspective.
Perception of instrumentality, because it defines whether the student think and really see the connection, the relation between their particular course and future goals, and this is what is originally is described as meaning in the theory, what is meaning is. But also we measured students' emotions because based on activity theory, the role of students' emotions is to direct and navigate whether you are making the correct choices. But we didn't ask them what do you more feel about your future, because we wanted the question, what do you feel about your future, still it's more cognitive than emotional, and you don't know when you ask these questions what is the answers based on really how students feeling right now or they're thinking about feeling. That's why we decided to measure students' thoughts about whether you think, first of all, this course is important for you, do you see any sense of instrumentality in it, and also separately we measured students' emotions, more about how do you feel right now. Not just about how do you feel about the meaning that you have or don't have, but just how do you feel it right now. And we wanted to see, one of the goals of the first study was to see the relationship between the motivational elements, because we didn't know if we take the all motivational elements in such configuration that was proposed by the activity theory, how they will work with each other. Because it could be that, for example, emotions would not show such a role if they measured just, right now, how do you feel? And actually, that's what's interesting, but what we found that, again, students' correlational analysis of motivational elements revealed that the relationship between emotions and all other emotions, the relationship was drawn between motives and each of the elements of other elements. But unfortunately, the relationship within the other elements, except motives, was very weak. And that's why also I think that we revealed, because we tried to measure these constructs a little bit separately, like each construct as it is. If I have understood your answer correctly. Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine that you think so, but in questionnaires about the time perspective, it's as well asked by the students. I like to think about and then a future goal. So it's a bit as same as an emotion at that time, I would think. There is not so much difference between the effective part of the time perspective. I like to think, I like to imagine. Then how you feel then an emotion. Don't you agree?
This component includes both cognition, because it's thinking about your emotions, and of course emotions because of the language is used. But also we measured the emotions separately, because I don't think that we can measure the meaning without this effective component. That's why actually this is in time perspective theory. It's also the important part of it, because meaning, in our last study, when we asked students directly, do you have any kind of meaning right now when you are performing a task? And then we also measured the other motivational elements. There were a lot of answers when students answered, I don't have a meaning, I don't know why I need to do, this presentation or notes, but even though that cognitively they said that we don't have a meaning, their emotions were still very positive and high, and all the other motivational elements were high, and they thought that they chose this learning task because they really want to do it. And this is interesting. I think this is interesting idea that sometimes when you speak about meaning, why you are doing something, do you understand the relationship between what you're doing and what you really want? Sometimes people really can answer, yes, I know I'm doing this because I want this. But sometimes it's more your internal feeling, and the meaning could be just really a feeling that I don't know why I'm doing it. If you ask me, I don't know, but I just do it. And that's why, again, I think this construct really describes good the notion of meaning from the activity theory perspective, because there is a struggle whether it is more cognitive or more affective domain. But also important, as I think, to measure the emotions separately, just about really how do you feel, not in relation to your learning journey, but how you feel right now, because probably it should be.
I think what is worse on time perspective is that it has been shown in many studies a very good predictor of the learning investment of the students. That's why I still think it would be good, but it's up to you. So I think we finished now. Thank you.
Peetsma. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Winia, Associate Professor at the Department of Conditions of Lifelong Learning at the Open University in Heerlen.
I would also like to, dear candidate, I would also like to congratulate you and your team on your dissertation. I especially like that you investigated an underrepresented topic in motivation by focusing on motivation regulation. I enjoyed reading it, and I also found it inspiring for my own research. My question is focused on chapter 5 of your dissertation, in which you performed a micro-analysis study. In your dissertation, you describe motivation as a multi-level, complex and dynamic construct, which you also presented in your presentation just yet. But I found that you narrowly defined motivational problems in that study, because you mainly focused on whether or not they started studying right away or were thinking about doing something else. But I was wondering, could motivational problems also be considered a multi-level, dynamic, complex system? And if so, how should we should we measure that in a future study?
Mm-hmm. Esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. I think that in this study, and this is the limitation of the study, we measured only the lower level motivational problems, and that's why probably we didn't find the relationship between high level motivation and motivation regulation strategies and the problems that students experience in real-time situations. So ideally, yes, we really should measure not only the problems which occur into students just in time performing a task, like, I don't know, forgot my pen, or I feel that I'm not confident to write an essay, but also to measure what high-level problems do students have. And it could be the questions concerning, did you have any... I would ask students about how do they think about studying at university in general, whether they think that why it is interesting, not interesting, what have you got any struggles with it, are you confident in your choices, not in a particular task, but in the more broader domain. I suggest more direction right now, not the direct questions, because sometimes it could be that theoretically, probably, if you're not sure in your higher level choices, for example, you didn't want to go to this faculty or even to this university, and probably each task then within this activity of choosing their own faculty becomes a motivational problem. But not because the essay itself is the problem, not because you don't have self-confidence in writing an essay, but more because you have problems, feelings about is it the whole university, the whole path you chose it the right way. That's why ideally, yes, it will be much more interesting also to measure high-level problems and whether and how they affect students' problems which occur in just-in-time performing learning tasks.
If I can follow up on that, because now you seem to focus more on addressing it on a higher level, but I think motivation changes or fluctuates throughout the day and also while studying. So that's why I like that you performed a microanalysis study, but I think this doesn't solve the problem of encountering problems during this microanalysis. If you focus on a task, because I think you can also, when you look at a task you are doing, you can also experience different motivational problems while doing it. And it isn't only starting or thinking about doing something else. It could also might be elements of that system, maybe the motive or the beliefs you have.
Actually, even by performing microanalysis, because sometimes when you ask the student, what do you feel right now by doing this learning task? Actually, one is answering not about the learning task, but the answer is about broader level. So probably the macroanalysis as a tool that you observe what student is doing right here now is still good, but probably the question should be asked not only about this particular task, but also in general about your learning right now. But still, I think that more when you measure higher order levels, like according to Leontiev, the activity, it's like actually it's the person's life. It's the way how one interacts with the whole world. And all our lives consist of a lot of activities, like defending a PhD, then celebrating with your parents, and so on. And these activities, it's more, as I think, it's more like our experience and memories from our past and thoughts about the future. And that's why probably these constructs is better to measure by having still a conversation with the person. Because I'm not sure, now I'm thinking that I'm not sure that whether if we want to measure higher order students' motivational problems, you can easily measure it by just asking the question, okay, what higher level problems do you experience? But if you ask the student about the whole story, about what relationship with education, with learning you had in the past when you finished your school, what the relationship with your education you think you feel in the future, what you're thinking about lifelong learning. And this story could give us more insights about how a particular person thinks about learning in general, not about performing a particular task. So that's why maybe microanalysis can give us cues, but I think that interview could be depth interview and the analyzing the story or the learning story of the person can give more insights about the motivational problems. That's what I'm thinking right now.
Thank you. I would like to give the word back.
Thank you very much. The opposition will be continued by Professor Brand Gruwel, Professor Design of Personalized Learning Arrangement at Maastricht University.
Dear candidates, first of all, this works. Oh yeah, this works. Dear candidates, first of all, I also want to congratulate you as my colleagues with your thesis on motivation. And yes, as we said, it's a really complex construct. So yeah, let's dive in again. And my question is about the second chapter, and it's about figure 2.1. It's the first time you lay out your concept of motivation. And you have 3 levels, and also the different elements, the motives, the emotional state, etc. But I'm a bit puzzled, because you also say that motivation, it's a process. And then I'm looking to the picture and I have something like, where is the process? Because I don't see arrows between level 2 and 3, for instance. And so I have something like, can you explain a bit more about, okay, what is the process? And if you have a model, how do you lay out the process? Can you tell us more?
Thanks. I had a lot of variants of this picture. When I tried to make the process, it became so complicated. But I will explain that this picture is more like making a photo. For example, you're looking for some action, like someone skiing or cycling a bike, and you just make a photo. So it shows you the key elements of activity, in this case of general activity system, but of course it doesn't show you like the whole directions. Ideally, I would say that if I had the chance like to remake this picture, for now I would made it like at least 3 the same pictures showing like this is the starting point. For example, you're entering the university and we can measure the students, we can make the photo of students' motivation based on these elements about how his motivation is right now while he's entering the university. Then we can make another photo like in the middle of the course, and the final one like we did in the end of the course. And this will be like 3 still pictures. And that's how I would make the figure. How to measure the process, not by looking at photos in different time perspectives. How to measure like on a video camera. I right now don't know. Yeah, I don't know, but it's really interesting.
It is not that you say certain elements in the picture, in the figure, are in a time perspective, because is it that you first set your goals and then say, okay, this is the goals and I really like and I'm intrinsically motivated? So is there a time perspective in those elements, or is everything at the same time?
They yes and no. So yes, all these elements exist in the same time, but it doesn't mean that the quality of this element is not changing. For example, the motive, you always have the motive, but you can, in the beginning of the study, you have this intrinsic motive, you could be very interested in the process. But if you measure students' motivation in the middle of the study, the motive will still be there, but it can change in this definition. Now you could be, so that's how it's changed.
Next question about the model. Because you have means and beliefs, and it's in one square. And then a few pages later, you do something, and I have something like, hey, what is happening here? Because then you say we measure means and beliefs by using a questionnaire on self-efficacy. And I have something like, and I hear you're talking, say, means is also about having a computer or a pencil or whatever. But that's not what you measure with self-efficacy. What is happening there in your model and in your head? That's
in my head, I have a list, at least of 15 categories of means and beliefs. And when I made a list of how we can measure it, then I have understood that students will not just finish my research and fulfill all the questionnaires. That's why we choose for this study the self-efficacy, because this was like some point of generalization. For example, yes, maybe I do not have right now internet connection. That's why I feel that I cannot perform this task. So we, based on these studies, except the last study, we don't know the details, like why you don't feel low self-efficacy. Maybe because your internal is self-esteem. Maybe you don't have internet. So that's why we pick it at the compromise.
But is it that you eventually, if you use a self-efficacy questionnaire, that you say we did not measure means?
We don't measure the type of means, but still, if you don't know how to work with the pen, you will feel that I'm not confident, I cannot perform this task. So this way, we don't know why, but we know the result feeling. Yeah.
Do we have time for a question? Okay. A completely different question. I'm working on a University of Applied Sciences with a lot of students, and I'm a teacher, and I read this and I have something like, okay, what can I do in my classroom to make my students more motivated? And of course, I can use the strategies, but also, in my opinion, I see different kind of students, and it's also about a learning environment and the tasks I give as a teacher that can motivate them. Not only the strategies they use, but also when I give a task more in a gaming form or a really authentic task, then I see students, hey, that's nice, I like that. Yeah. So what do you say to teachers in how they design their education, and how can this help? Mm-hmm. What's your advice?
I want to write about it the second book, to be honest, because this dissertation, the idea of this dissertation was, okay, if I cannot change the educational system, how I can still help the students. Mm-hmm. But in the end of this dissertation, in the practical chapter, I was thinking about that. The final schema of motivation strategies that we suggested can be used by both sides. So what I advise for the teachers, first of all, that they can use this schema to analyze, do you have in your course any tasks, any questions, any highlights that help students to reflect on their motives, one of the elements. It's like, again, you cannot help every student, but you can, as you said, create an environment. Yeah. So if you have the space for asking the question about students' motives, for asking this question about their means and beliefs, that's what I think that you can do first. Just reflect on your strategy that you use as a teacher.
Yeah. Nice answer. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Professor Brand-Gruwel. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Rovers, Assistant Professor at the Department of Educational Development and Research at Maastricht University, and she is present online.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, first of all, I would also like to congratulate you and your team on your wonderful dissertation. It was a pleasure to read, and I learned a lot. Now, for my first question, I would like to ask your paranymph to read aloud the 11th proposition.
I didn't take the mic. To hold. Yeah, thank you.
The last one?
You should read the last one proposition. Yes, this is.
This is the way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
It is short and simple. I love it. When I was a kid, whenever we would go on a holiday, my parents always used to take the scenic route. So across small country roads, through forests and things like that. My brother and I hated it. We just wanted to reach our destination as fast as possible. But through the years, I've learned to appreciate what you can see if you take the time to look around. So now I would like to invite you to reflect on your own academic journey so far. What have been the most interesting sites that you may not have originally been looking for, or things to look out for in the future?
I have, I think, one big insight about what is learning in general. And when I look to Jeroen and Anika as my supervisors, I always thought that this is the teachers that will help me to become a better researcher. And what I was expecting in the beginning, it's, some kinds of, maybe not lectures, but clarifications, what I'm doing wrong, what I should do better. But most of all, especially from Jeroen, I got just very big questions. I mean, not big in the size, in the words, he always was very short, but the questions after which I had to think about, if I'm lucky, for several days. And then I understood that great, as I think, teaching is when you give students a freedom to learn. Because there are a lot of people who try to teach me something, but actually not a lot of them give me the space of freedom to learn something. And that's why my academic journey showed me this interesting insight that yes, the high level of uncertainty could really distract you from learning, because you really become very fast frustrated when you cannot answer the supervisor's question and you have a Zoom. But on the other side, then I learned that with this freedom, I received a lot of choices where I want to go, what road I want to choose. And that's why for me it was like the first big insight that really uncertainty and this freedom could be frustrated, but this is where you can make your choices. Without this, you cannot self-regulate your learning path. And the second insight was more about the research, the scientific world. That for me, really a lot of happened during my PhD, and it turned out that one day really science became my safe space, I would say, and that's why I have understood like this is my path. So a lot of could happen in real world, and it will continue happening. But this is the way, and I'm just going through it. Yes.
Thank you. That's a very nice answer. My second question relates to something that first stood out to me in chapter 2, but also comes back in later chapters. And this particular study aims to correlate aspects of Wolter's theory of motivational regulation strategies to Ivanikov's adaptation of Leontev's activity theory. And in order to do this, you take elements from the theoretical model and you measure them using a combination of different skills. So for example, to measure goal and personal meaning, which correspond to elements 3 and 4, respectively, you use one skill, which is, in this case, the Russian 8-item version of the perceptions of instrumentality skill. So in other words, you are already grouping together certain concepts while the underlying correlations are not yet known, and that was actually your research question. So if you are still trying to see how constructs are empirically related to each other, is it justifiable to already combine them in your questionnaires? And to what extent do you feel like your own assumptions here might have influenced your results?
That triangulation is my favorite word. Not always I can do it, but that's why I think that one of the limitations of the studies is the way how we operationalized each of the constructs. And that's why we refused from the questionnaires in the last studies, but we gave students just the open questions. And that's why we try to see to the same constructs from the different measurement perspectives, not only by measuring by the constructs which were delivered in questionnaires by other theories, but also give students more freedom to answer as I feel or think, not relying on the questionnaire. So ideally, I would say that it's not like the final point of the operationalization of this theory, of course. And I more feel that there could be other ways that could be also compared with each other until we find a better way to take the whole picture with these elements. So here, I think it was the attempt, and based on this attempt, you have these results. But others I also needed.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I think I should give the word back to the prorector.
It's now time to go to the last opponent, Professor Heinemann, Professor of Competency-Based Education and Assessment at this university.
Thank you very much. Dear candidates, also my compliments for your work. And I must say it took me a bit of motivation because for me this is complex work. I'm not a very statistical person, so I really had to show perseverance, and I think I used some of your motivational regulation strategies. I recognize them now, so I had to do some performance approach self-talk and some self-consequenting promising myself some kind of award, so that helped. What really, where I spent a lot of time on is also on the numbers, because it was a quantitative thesis, of course. And can I take you to figure 3.2, which is the same as 4.2, because there you show the lines in terms of the different profiles, autonomous, heterogeneous, etc. And when I first starting to look at the numbers, because you have an n number next to each profile, n is 399, n is 430, and I thought, well, this is when you add this up, this is higher than the number of students, because you have approximately 1,000 students, and if you add this up, it's around 1,700. So I was thinking, well, this cannot be that wrong, because that's a really big difference. So in the end, I figured it out. This is about the number of students who responded per occasion.
Yeah, and they changed their profiles. So
they changed their profiles. So that is, I think, in figure 4.3. But here I could not figure out the numbers. In view of time, let's not go over that. But here I thought, so there are students who completed occasion 1 and occasion 2 and occasion 3, and there were students who completed different occasions, and that enables you, at least to some extent, to look at transitions, but not fully, because you, and that's a question, you could not follow the students. You do not know a student completing a questionnaire at occasion 1. Do you know how that student completed the questionnaire in occasion 2?
Yeah.
You do.
Because
you could track them.
Yes.
Okay, then my follow-up question is, you had 229 students in occasion 1, 2, and 3. They completed the questionnaire. Why did you not use those students for a transition analysis? Because you can see that student at 3 points in time.
We did several models, because we have, unfortunately, a lot of students who didn't fulfill the questionnaires in general. And
but you had this group of 229 students
who completed
3 occasions.
Yeah, but it's not enough, unfortunately, for transition analysis. I mean,
another type of analysis. You have 200 students for which you have data on 3 occasions. Yeah, which I think is very interesting. That's longitudinal analysis.
Yeah, but if we want to have reliable data and we want to stick with the Latin profile analysis, which give us more insights about the...
Is there another type of analysis you could have used with 230 students?
Maybe you can name it.
Oh, I can't, but can you?
Cluster analysis you want me to use?
No, just thinking aloud, because I wasn't sure. I couldn't read it in your thesis whether it was a longitudinal study or cross-sectional, but I hear you. It's longitudinal for a group of students where you have the data for occasion 1, 2, and 3.
And so then we stick with these still 200 students.
Could have been a discussion. Let me put it like that. Okay. Then that's for the numbers, but I think it's good to look at figure 4.3, because there I couldn't, but maybe that's my lack of numerical insight. Having used a number of motivational regulation strategies, I could also turn to one with intrinsic motivation, because connecting it to my individual interest, which is assessment. And you had an elephant on one of your slides in your intro. Well, I think it's also maybe a bit of the elephant in the room in this case, because I would say that students learn because they are assessed in the end. So assessment drives learning. And in your thesis, you do mention it a couple of times, things like, why should I pass the exam? You see it in chapter 5, because there you have qualitative data in the SRL microanalysis, and there you do read that students mention exams, etc. Because this was a large database and students from different programs. Do you know when were the exams or their assignments, and how is that? How could you take that to account when they completed the questionnaires?
I added that, especially in our last qualitative study, that this was only 1 week, and it was somewhere like in autumn. So the exams, like in winter, far away. And what I mentioned there, that probably if we make the same research design but closer to the exams, we'll have the different results, because the students' situation changes, and I mean that they could use another strategies that they don't use in a more normal life.
But you'd also say that it's stable, so students stick to their motivational regulation strategies.
No, I said that the motivational structure in the theoretical construct is stable. But
okay, not their strategy.
Yeah, but students' motivation are changing, and that's also was shown in our analysis. Yeah, so again, the motive always will be the motive, but what kind of motive you have in the beginning, in the end, nearby the exam, this could really different.
And how would you integrate that because that was discussed in earlier dialogues, how would you integrate that in, like, for instance, you mentioned training or helping students to decide on the type of strategies? How would you integrate that? Because exams will be exams.
Yeah. Firstly, what I lack is understanding what is the time of changing of motivation. Like, we make these 3 measurements throughout the course, but if we know more precisely, whether the student's motivation never changes once a week, then I will tell you, once a week, give this reflective assessment with the students.
Okay. Well, you can finalize the discussion later on.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Professor Heineman. Daria Eliashkina, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense, and I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return to this room.
Thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side, 7 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer. East side to the west side, no place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. All your time, 'cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer. East side to the west side, no place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Traveling so far from home, gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. Even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you won the battle once you grow. Southside, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goal's only getting clearer. East side to the west side, No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and not. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror. I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer. East side to the west side. No place like home. If it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and not. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. 'Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Daria Ilishkina. The degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict, and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor De Bruin is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Daria Igorevna Ilishkina, the degree of doctor, and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with a degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee, and affixed with the official seal of the university.
Close by. Oh yeah, here we go. No. Small. Yeah. Thank you very much. There you go. So big. It's really big.
Dear Daria, it is a great honor to be the first to congratulate you on obtaining your PhD degree. Yet, as we all know, this shouldn't have been my honor, but your first promoter, Jeroen van Meijenboer, who passed away just a month ago and did not get to see your printed dissertation or witness your defense. And even though this realization is an enormous pity and it makes this moment bittersweet, I know that is not what Jeroen would have wanted this to be. He would have been very proud. And so are Jeroen Donkers and I. And he would have wanted us to enjoy this moment, and we will. Your collaboration with Maastricht University started around the year 2015. Quite a bit happened to get you to this collaboration. Your supervisor in Russia, Andrei Podolsky, had been collaborating with Jeroen since the 1990s. He was the chair of the Department of Innovative Education at Lomonosov Moscow State University, where you were doing your studies, and he even was a teacher of your mother. He got to know you and your keen interest in reforming education with the aim of making education more fitting to students' needs and interests by increasing their autonomous motivation. Not many master's students have such a clear vision of what they would like to achieve in the future, and even less have such a specific vision on a hard topic as educational innovation. As you've mentioned in several of our meetings, or according to you, education is the way to improve the world. So in your quest to improve the world, you even applied and got admitted to a master program at Oxford University. Professor Podolsky was not in favor. You already have a master's degree. If you want to change education, go do a PhD with Jeroen van Meijenboer, he said. And so you did. Jeroen learned about your interests and introduced you to a concept you hadn't come across before, self-regulated learning. And look at your dissertation now. It had a lasting impact. You quickly dove into literature on motivation regulation strategies and drew up a strong research proposal so that your official PhD trajectory could start in April 2016. You set up a collection of theoretically driven and challenging studies with hundreds of students in Russia completing surveys at different moments in time and even reporting every thought they had about wanting or not wanting to start studying. When I tagged along in 2018, when your other supervisor had left for another academic job, most of the data collection was already finished, and you were about to start complex latent profile analysis and qualitative interpretations of students' motives to learn or to not learn. Every meeting we had consisted of you enthusiastically bringing us up to speed with your latest readings, ideas, and analysis. And up to speed can be interpreted quite literally in this case, because as we've witnessed here today, you're an easy and quick speaker with a thorough knowledge of the literature and a clear view on what is the next steps to get you to your goal. You didn't have the easiest path, connecting activity theory to work on motivation regulation in a scientific world where self-determination theory rules the scepter. But you made it work, and your first publication is quickly receiving many citations. And outside your PhD project, you were doing so many other things. As mentioned, your aim was to change education. And you quickly became an avid trainer and consultant in educational design. Your approach was to bridge scientific theory and educational practice wherever possible. And it's not surprising that you became an expert in training according to the 4CID model. Personally, you were thriving too, getting married, getting a dog, and visiting many beautiful places in the world. Then your world was turned upside down in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. The first time we had a meeting after that, you had already fled to Uzbekistan. And we couldn't talk about data analysis, only about the horror that was happening and all the lives that were lost and affected. I remember your enormous relief when we indicated that of course we would continue our collaboration. As Jeroen mentioned, wars may happen, but science continues. Your PhD project then became your island of safety and stability, as you yourself called it. Your motivation to complete the PhD grew, but your belief that education would change the world suffered. With the help of, again, your first promoter, Jeroen, you were able to move to the Netherlands for the final stage of your PhD project. And as we already expected, you didn't need much to integrate. You found your way, you started up new educational consultancy and design project. You found a place to live in Amsterdam, and many of us are still wondering how you did so. These days, you sort of need a PhD in real estate to make that happen. Your confidence grew, and you started to believe again that education is the key to change. And now you finish your PhD, and your mother is here to witness it. Daria, it's incredibly impressive how resilient you handle what life puts on your path and how you keep your eye on the goal and know what to do to get you there. You hadn't heard of it until 2015, but you were so long before then a highly self-regulated learner, although you don't spend these skills particularly on self-regulation of motivation. No need to. Ivanikov and Leontev would be proud. It's also clear that a prosperous professional career lies ahead of you, and I was glad to learn that Erasmus University Rotterdam is now picking the fruits of your skills. I'd like to extend my congratulations to your mother and, of course, your husband, and the rest of your family and friends. I can sense that they're extremely proud of you, and they should be. I hope you enjoy this accomplishment enormously, and I'm glad we will stay connected. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dear Dr. Eliashkina, I can mention that now. Also, on behalf of Maastricht University, I would like to congratulate you with the degree you have acquired. Of course, I also congratulate your family, friends, colleagues present here, partly, and probably online. I was really kind of impressed by the enthusiasm with which you defended your thesis, and that probably illustrates also your motivation to attain this degree. It was really a pleasure to listen to you. And of course, you were awarded a degree, so that means that also the committee here present was satisfied with the way you defended your thesis. I'd like to congratulate the supervising team and, of course, commemorate also the important contribution of Professor van Merrienboer, who sadly passed away last month. I'd like to thank the members of the degree committee for their efforts in reading the thesis, judging the thesis, and being present here for the opposition, especially our guests from outside of Maastricht University, Professor Peetsma and Dr. Winia. And well, I hope that you will look back with satisfaction on this defense ceremony. And it's now time to relax and enjoy the degree you have obtained and enjoy the rest of the day with friends and family. So with that, I close this academic ceremony.
Afterwards, or no? Sorry? Okay, I can't say anything else yet. Okay, I'll say it personally.
Yeah, we make some pictures here, and I give the